Hello, hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome, welcome. Please type in the chat where you're joining from today and how many people are watching with you. And if you are able, please acknowledge the native land which you occupy. And if you are a host from an in-person site, feel free to chat a single check-in from where you are and how many are in the room. And if you wish, you can even ask audience members to tell you where they came in from, and you can chat it into the stream here. We're filling the room. We would love to hear where you're coming in from today, how many are with you, and what native land you occupy. Great. Let's just see who's in here. Wonderful. Doug, Party of One in downtown Chicago, Council of the Three Fires. Great. Great. Anyone else? I see that we already have a pretty good audience here. Love to hear your voices and see you check in. Where are you coming in from today? How many are with you? And what native land do you occupy? And if you do not know the answer to that last question, I'm putting a link in here, native-land.ca, and you can check that out later too if you want. Marie Yvonne in Seattle with her dog, Duwamish land. Thank you, Marie. Anybody else? Alex from Dominican University, also Chicago. Jay is also coming from our Dominican University audience, Belmont Cragen. Great, wonderful. Thank you all. Keep checking in, and we'll see those, your voices fill the room in that way, and I will move us ahead. So I'm Anna Garcia Doyle, the Executive Director of One Earth Collective, which produces the One Earth Film Festival. I want to welcome you to this screening event, which we hope will provide us all with rich opportunities for learning, a brave and safe space for important conversations, and a way to move from inspiration to action. We could not do this work without the support of our sponsors and partners, so thank you to the Chicago Community Trust and Dominican University. Another quick note, if your circumstances allow, please donate to support One Earth's nonprofit year-round screening events, youth programs, and more at oneearthfilmfest.org.
Welcome to One Earth's Earth Week Mini Film Festival, in continuing partnership with the City of Chicago. The One Earth team, together with Chicago's Chief Sustainability Officer, Angela Tovar, and her team, invite you to join us in turning the tide on our climate crisis. This week, we're joining forces in using the power of film to create a sea change on topics of environment and those intersected with environment, like racial, social, and economic justice. Here is a brief word from Angela now.
Hello, my name is Angela Tovar, and I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Chicago. It's an incredible honor to be here with you and to partner with One Earth to bring you another exciting Earth Day Mini Film Festival. We commend the One Earth Collective for curating this incredible lineup of films and for all of the important programming that they lead year-round to foster thought-provoking dialogues on pressing environmental issues through a justice lens. This Earth Week, the City of Chicago will release its updated climate goals through the 2022 Climate Action Plans to identify new and ambitious targets and to reaffirm our commitment to climate action and the delivery of equitable co-benefits that our communities need to thrive. We look forward to joining you all for an exciting week of film viewing and discourse and a continued partnership to move the city toward a more just and equitable climate future. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for your words and for your continuing collaboration. As we celebrate the 52nd anniversary of Earth Day this week, we continue our hybrid fest format, presenting virtual and Chicago area in-person events. And we remain committed to our unique community-based model of raising awareness, engaging in dialogue, and being inspired to act on behalf of our One Earth. A powerful image and call to collective action in light of this year's festival theme, Turn the Tide, are the words of Japanese writer Ryanosuke Satoru. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. As always, our agenda will be to introduce you to folks who will join us in a rich discussion after the film, to watch the film together, to unpack the film's themes with our facilitator and panelists. Please participate using the chat. And finally, to share actions we can all take to be part of the solution. I'd now like to make a few brief acknowledgements. First, as we reframe narratives around justice, environment, and equitable solutions to our climate crisis, we acknowledge the many filmmakers and subjects, facilitators, and panelists joining us this week. Thank you. Second, One Earth Collective is based in Chicago, the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations. and home to many other tribes, including today, peoples from over 100 tribal nations. And yet there are no federally recognized tribes in Illinois, due in part to colonization, relocation, and genocide. One Earth commits to including films that center Indigenous stories and voices. Beyond acknowledging the native lands we each occupy, we must lift up and support the work of First Nations groups. If you're in the Chicago area, please support the important work of the American Indian Center Chicago, Indigenous Environmental Network, Shy Nations Youth Council, and others. And watch for Native Truths, Our Voices, Our Stories, an exhibition co-curated by the Field Museum and collaborators from more than 100 tribes, opening next month. A third acknowledgement. Shared agreements can help our conversation remain safe and respectful. When participating today, please put aside your preconceptions, acknowledge your privilege, internalize what you've learned, approach the conversation with respect, engage your active listening, and use I statements and get comfortable with your own story. A quick note before we meet our facilitator and program participants, please amplify today's voices on social media. The hashtags for the festival are hashtag OEFF 2022 and hashtag Turn the Tide. And now I'd like to turn it over to our facilitator to introduce themselves, the panelists, and our film.
You think after 2 years of Zoom, I'd understand how to unmute. Thank you, Anna. Good evening or good afternoon, as the case may be, from those of you joining us from Alaska or Arizona. On behalf of One Earth Collective, the City of Chicago Sustainability Office, and Dominican University, I'd like to welcome you to this Earth Week watch party for the ground beneath us. My name is Doug Dixon. I too am a Dominican Brennan alumnus, and I will be your discussion facilitator this evening. I would bore you with my CV, but I'd rather not. Tell you why I'm here. I am here because I'm a firm believer in the work of the One Earth Collective, the One Earth Film Festival, and the City of Chicago Sustainability Office. And I believe that community is a force multiplier. And I want to add my drop to help turn the tide to reverse environmental degradation and economic and social degradation. That's why I'm here. That's why I do it. And I hope you will join me. As Anna mentioned earlier, the One Earth Film Festival has a model that's somewhat different than our traditional movie watching model. I think traditionally we watch a movie, leave the theater, click the remote, move on without reflecting adequately what we've seen, what we feel, and how that impacts our lives. The One Earth Film Festival will provide an opportunity to not only be entertained and informed by the movie, but hopefully you'll stick around after the movie to participate in a lively discussion with some engaged panelists to strengthen the discussion and our understanding and maybe trigger new ideas that will lead us to action. So I look forward to having you participate after the movie. And now I'd like to briefly introduce our panelists. We'll get to know more about them after the movie screening. First, I'd like to introduce Raquel Garcia-Alvarez, who works for the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. Raquel, good to see you. Secondly, would like to introduce the key. I won't say the key, but one of the key characters in the movie that we'll be watching to introduce the movie, Bernadette Demientieff. Bernadette. And you can tell us a little bit about the movie.
Sure. Jinwinzi, sure. Bernadette Demientieff, Oji, Gwich'in, Gwich'in. First, I want to acknowledge that I'm on the Lower Tanana people's ancestral homelands in Fairbanks, Alaska. I'm Gwich'in from Fort Yukon, and which is 8 miles above the Arctic Refuge. I'm at 8 miles above the Arctic Circle. Excuse me. I want to introduce this film. It was a while back. I watched it, and I was just beginning the work, and I've grown a lot since then, but my heart still remains the same, and that's to protect our sacred lands and the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. I just want to clarify one thing. The Arctic Refuge was not set aside for an oil and gas development. It was set aside as a refuge. And the refuge should, it says a lot the name, it says it all on its own. So just watching it, it just brought back memories, and I hope you all enjoy it as much as I did. Masit Chow. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Bernadette. So without further ado, a couple of quick notes before we move to the screening. For those of you at Dominican, would like to ask that you put your phones in airplane mode. We may have some bandwidth issues in the auditorium, so if you put those on to preserve bandwidth and then turn them back on for the chat session after the movie, we deeply appreciate it. So without further ado, let's watch The Ground Beneath Us. Look forward to seeing you in about 60 minutes. Wow. Engaging, provocative. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did too. A quick note, for those of you in person at Dominican, please turn your phones back on off of airplane mode and take a picture of this scan code to join our chat. Those of you that are not in person can participate in the Vimeo chat and maybe think of some questions that we might want to ask our panelists. But before we start asking panelists questions, I'd like to ask each one of you a question. What are some of the scenes, people, or lines in the film that you remember? What are scenes, people, and lines that you remember? Please type that into the chat log. Don't be shy. We just saw it. Okay, I'll break the ice. What stuck with me and still sticks with me was the opening of the movie. That was kind of the movie reel opening where we talked about 300 years ago, between the oceans, this country contained everything that everybody needed. And then the white man rode across the country, and I think the words were hack, rip, and gouge to make this great country. That sticks with me. Any other lines stick with anybody else? The American flag with an indigenous American face is a powerful statement about the founding of America on theft, genocide, and slavery. I think Aria shared that comment with us earlier. Any scenes, people, or lines that you remember? Very well then. I will bring back our panelists and maybe ask them what lines or scenes they remember from the movie. Briefly, let me reintroduce our panelists that we briefly met earlier. First, I will start with Raquel Garcia-Alvarez. Rocky is the Stewardship Program Coordinator for the Forest Preserve District of Cook County and co-leads the Latinx Stewardship Days to connect the local Latinx community to the forest preserves. She is currently on a detail focusing on operationalizing racial equity within the forest preserves. Welcome, Rocky.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me here today.
We're
It's a
pleased to
pleasure
have
to
you.
be here.
Thank you. And the woman that we've watched for 30 minutes for the past 60, I'd like to reintroduce Bernadette Demientieff, who is the Executive Director of the Gwich'in Steering Committee and is from Fort Yukon, Alaska. Fort Yukon, Alaska is 8 miles above the Arctic Refuge. Bernadette is a mother, a grandmother, and is standing strong to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, coastal plain, the porcupine caribou herd, and the Gwich'in way of life. Ladies, welcome to our watch party. We've got a broad community of people that are interested in this topic. So let's jump in. I'll ask both of you. I'll start with Bernadette, unfortunately. Bernadette, you were in this movie. I guess it was filmed maybe a couple of years ago. And I think I heard you say during our debriefing that you watched it recently. What stuck in your mind when you watched this movie recently after having participated in its filming 2 years ago?
Sure. Well, I was watching it with my daughter, and she's 13 and she's on the Gwich'in Youth Council. And she just like literally asked me, not even a couple minutes ago, how does the federal government own the land that we occupied for thousands of years? And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know how to answer that, but she's very smart. And I don't know. But regardless of its federal land, a lot of people need to understand that Indigenous people have always occupied these lands. And we have people coming in, making decisions about our future, and they don't involve us. We're not at the table, and it's not okay. And it makes me proud to see that Indigenous people all across the country, all across the world, actually standing up and speaking with one voice and making a statement that we are not going to put up with this any longer.
Right. It outrages me. It outrages anybody that thinks about it. Raquel, I think this is the first time you saw the movie earlier this week. What stuck with you in watching this movie?
There were many things that stuck with me, and I want to first highlight a few facts about the forest preserve so that way I can make that connection to what is happening locally. So I work for the Forest Preserves of Cook County. We are the largest and oldest forest preserve system in the nation. We are over 100 years old. We're actually older than the national parks. And, if you can believe that, right? And we also hold the largest biodiversity for the state of Illinois. And, many of the things that were said in the film, while people who are watching locally may think like, oh, that's happening in Utah, it's happening in Alaska. Those same pressures and those same conversations are also happening here locally with the forest preserves, because there are developers or local people who see the forest preserves as land that has not yet been developed, or that land that is getting in the way of future development and future infrastructure. And part of the role of the forest preserves is to remind everyone about the value that the forest preserves brings. And, people think like, oh, it's a vacant lot. Like, you're the forest preserves, you preserve forests, but we preserve a variety of ecosystems like wetlands and prairies and open space that is waiting to be restored to its natural glory. So I think people may be surprised for that, but we have to play a lot of defense with a lot of public who wants to develop the land.
I think it's interesting that the very title, Forest Preserve, kind of speaks to what we're about. Wildlife refuge seems like it says what we're about, but it's interesting how this movie has identified clearly the contradiction between public and private interests. It's like if somebody looks at something, well, I'm not using it, therefore it's not used. It's not its highest and best use. And I'm glad that you are engaged in the fight to preserve the wilderness legacy in the Chicago area. Got some questions or comments from some of the audience. Oh, speaking of the contradiction between interest, Joey finds it interesting that the duality of two groups of people doing right by their own, but putting them at odds with each other, like the loggers with foster children. It's like, okay, that's a conflict in interest there. And I'm sure we've got some of that here also. Kristen has asked us, she had a comment. I don't know if this is a question. She said, I was struck by the graduation scene in Oregon. Love hearing about the family. I agree with the ban on logging, but wish there were other ways to make a living there. Okay, I get that. Let me questionize that and ask that of Bernadette. How has the protection of the wildlife refuge impacted the economics of the people that live there? Do people do better when we exploit that territory?
Okay, so there's our natural resources. That's our survival. Yes, development provides jobs, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it provides jobs that's for Alaskans. And secondly, I mean, I like money. Okay, who doesn't? But not if it's going to negatively impact my future generations.
Yeah.
It's not worth it when it comes down to it. And, indigenous peoples in this country have just been dismissed so long, and it's getting old. You gotta understand that, like, think about it from a different perspective. What if I walk into your house, sit on your couch, open your fridge, start digging in, you won't allow that. And that's how we feel. We didn't come looking for this fight. This fight came to our front door. We're not asking for anything but the ability to live the way that the land that Creator blessed us with. That's all we're asking, is just for the respect to live that.
Seems simple.
Yeah,
it seems simple. I don't want to exclude Raquel, but I do have a specific question for Bernadette from Jim Babcock. How important is the solidarity from others around the country for your struggle?
It's very important. Although the Gwich'in have been leading this fight, for the last 40 years, we do need our allies to step up. We do need our partners to speak up on our behalf. It's not just a Gwich'in issue. There's other indigenous people that live off of this herd in Alaska, but their voices are not being heard. I got a big mouth and I just use it. I don't have a choice. Giving up is not an option for us right now. And yeah.
It's your life. Yeah. Giving up is not an option. Thank you. Got a question for Camille. Oh gosh, this is a softball question. I think you must know Rocky, and she paid you to ask this question. How can we get youth excited about conservation efforts? Or have you seen it happen already at the forest preserves? Oh gosh, Rocky, tell us about conservation efforts and getting young people engaged, and specifically Latinx people and people of color.
Yeah. I think the conservation community needs to change the narrative of what it means to be connected to nature and to what it is to be a conservationist. And I think the forest preserves has been trying really hard to meet people where they are at. As I said before, I lead Latinx Stewardship Days, where it's multi-generational families coming out to help take care of the forest preserves, but they're also sharing that cultural connection. And we're also celebrating being within community. And I think the conservation community can do better of providing that space, because with a lot of Latino families and maybe immigrant families in general, they have a connection to their homeland and are trying to foster a new connection here. And they may not understand what public lands are because they're not seeing themselves in those public lands. One thing that someone told us was, like, you need to start using other words besides like hiking. Like, you should say like fiestas, and that you can bring out your piñatas, and to celebrate the earth while you're celebrating with friends and family. And that approach has been pretty successful in bringing people out, and also disproving the myth that people of color do not care about the earth, or disproving like there's only one way to be outdoorsy and only one way to care about the earth. And there are multiple ways, and we just need to provide that space.
Okay, and let people know that they feel welcome. I think you said something that just hit me. That many people look at public spaces and say, well, that's public, but not for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's for some other part of the public, which is not the purpose. Oh boy, I've got a, I won't say heavy question. I'll keep my judgment out of it. And it's a statement, not a question, but I will ask both of you to respond to the statement. Ed in Port Townsend, Washington says that the highest and best use, that's a kind of real estate and land use term, sounds a lot like sustainable. How can we get both private and public interest to make long-term planning around sustainability? It comes down in many cases to the difference between short-term and long-term planning. I think Bernadette mentioned this briefly. It's like some people are thinking about right now money, and she's thinking about children and grandchildren. I got you on screen, Raquel. Do you feel that the main tension that you feel in protecting public spaces comes down to short-term versus long-term thinking, or there's something else that's amiss?
You know, there's a little bit of both, where the short term could be the economic gains. And then we have also seen long-term thinking of we're planning for population growth. And so more people are going to be moving to this area. So we have to build the infrastructure, and the forest preserves has this vacant land that could be developed to build additional roads, additional schools, and we're getting in ways. So it's a combination. I see it within Cook County that it's a combination of both, but I think we forget that the forest preserves and other natural land agencies invest a lot in restoration to undo those short-term economic impacts. So even though those short-term economic gains are made, we, the public, pay for them later by trying to restore and heal the land. So we have to balance that thinking as well.
Okay, thank you. Bernadette, do you feel that for lack of a better term, the battles that you've participated in protecting the Arctic Wildlife Refuge is basically a tension between short-term and long-term interest, or is there something else underneath it?
Well, I think that, everybody needs to recognize that Indigenous people have sacred lands. And regardless if it's being used or not, it's, just like the Arctic Refuge, that's sacred land to us. We do not step foot there. That is where our caribou give birth. And that is, we're forbidden to step there. And so it's just recognizing that not everything is about money. I'm being real. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm trying to be kind with my words. It's just, everything's not about money.
Sorry, Bernadette, don't be kind with your words. I will connect a couple of statements that you've made. In the movie, you made a statement. What do Americans hold sacred? And I think you just mentioned what most Americans hold sacred, and that's the short-term greenback. And that's a source of tension for all of us in the environmental community. Got a few more questions in my chat log. Let me see. What's a fun one? A fun question. Oh, fun question. Gossiping. We heard that you had a very exciting week so far, Bernadette, meeting really fantastic people. Can you share with us who you were meeting with earlier this week, and if there might be a message that they would share with us or that you'd like to share with us as a result of the meetings you've had this week?
Yeah, I met with Secretary Holland, and I feel
Stop, Secretary Holland. Who is that?
I feel that, because she is an Indigenous woman, they hold her to a higher standard, and that's not fair, but I did share with her that in Alaska, it's different from the lower 48, which we call the lower 48, that, I was born into a corporation, but a corporation is just a corporation. With a Native corporation is just, a brown person running it. It's still a for-profit.
Yeah.
entity, and that the corporations are going to be the ones who benefit from development, but the tribes are going to be the ones who have to live with the aftermath of the destruction that they cause. And, she was very open, in listening to everybody's input. And it makes me very proud that she's coming to Alaska to listen to many of our voices, because not very many Secretary of Interior have ever done that.
Okay, thank you. That's an inspiring message, especially given the some of the messaging in the movie at the end of the Trump era. Frankly, to me, feels like a bit of a downer. So to have a different administration, hopefully with a different view, with a different message, is encouraging. So while I've got you on screen, I've got a question in the chat. The film ends with the Trump administration gutting of the Bears Ears National Monument and mentions the upcoming election that is now behind us. We're in a different place in our country now, or are we? Start with you, Bernadette. Can you share any updates that you know of on the topic of our nation's public lands as it's changed in the past couple of years? Has this new administration really changed much? And I've got the same question for Raquel in a couple of minutes.
Well, I think they're trying. In all honesty, I think that they are looking into every. The our refuge was put into law. They opened our sacred lands to oil and gas development, an area that we never stepped foot in, and they put a stop to it so that they can review the very rushed and sloppy and embarrassing process that they did to open it. Not to be, that's the truth. And I'm glad that they are reviewing it. If, tribes up here are not, Alaska has 229 federally recognized tribes, and our voices are not being heard. And I think that Deb Haaland, Madam Secretary Haaland, is slowing the process down, and I think she's reviewing everything to the best of her ability. I can't expect her to be shutting everything down, but I expect her to be respectful of our lands and of her job.
Okay. Well, I think to me, maybe I've misinterpreted this, but if you had an imminent order to reduce the size of the area and she slowed down that process, that could be considered progress, that we're not destroying it as fast. Raquel, have you seen a change locally in how the public or how the government is managing this interface between the forest preserve and private uses?
We have seen the change, and kind of to the examples that were given in the film where that change can happen because of change in politics, right? Like the Forest Preserves is a government agency, and Toni Preckwinkle is the current president of Cook County, and she's been such a rock star and supporter of the Forest Preserves that we have been able to do many changes because of her leadership. But for a really long time, we were kind of known as like the best kept secret. And, I want to acknowledge that we are in a pandemic and that many negative things have happened. But one of the positive things is that more people were getting out to nature and coming out to the forest preserves and getting to know us locally. We still have the challenge that many people may not understand who we are, because when they think of natural areas, they think of national parks and not the 100-acre woodland that's 30 minutes away or whatever. So we're still working to make those connections to the land and for people to come out to enjoy it.
Excellent. Thank you. It's odd. I grew up on the south side of Chicago many years ago. And growing up in the city, you think concrete grows out of the ground or something. But the Dan Ryan Woods out south was like a great place to just get away from the concrete, get away from the noise, and connect with nature. And that's changed. I think that's permanently imprinted me to say, concrete buildings, those are cool, but Mother Nature manifests herself within me in these natural places. I've got to be conscious of time, and I think we're marching toward time that folks want to move on. And as I promised, and as Anna promised, one of the points of the watch party is to stimulate ideas and to think about action. And I'd like to move us briefly toward thinking about action. When I think it was Biden's inauguration, had a new poet come up and read a poem to us, Amanda Gorham. Beautiful young lady and powerful writer and a powerful speaker. So I can't say her words as well as she did, but an excerpt from her inaugural poem. There is no rehearsal. The time is now, now, now. Earth, pale blue dot, we will fail you not. In order for us to not fail our pale blue dot, we all must take action, whether it be individually, collectively, or institutionally. Like to pick your brains right now. I've got Rocky on the screen, so I'll pick her first. What is the single strongest action that you could suggest that our audience consider to protect our pale blue dot?
I'm gonna say two very quickly, and
okay.
say, get out to the forest preserves and also, and get to know your local natural areas. That is one of the best things you can do. And the second thing is to plant native plants. The Forest Preserves has a conservation at home program where we can help guide and educate people, because we need to protect the biodiversity of this planet. So I encourage everyone to, plant some native plants, whether it's in pots or in your backyard, because they will bring the pollinators to your house, and you can see nature in your backyard. You could bring nature to you.
Become a part of nature. Oh my gosh, what a radical idea. Thank you, Rocky. Bernadette, give me one, maybe two strong actions that a person could take to help stem the tide, protect our dot.
So I would encourage you to contact your congressman and our congresswoman, and encourage them to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and the many indigenous communities across the country. And secondly, I would just share our story. We are not asking for much. We're simply asking for the respect to live off the land that Creator blessed us with. And I don't think that's asking for much.
Doesn't sound like much to me. But sharing the story, this movie affected me, and I can't imagine that this story would not affect others if they hear it. Thank you very much, Bernadette. Ladies, I'm going to pivot us to the entire audience talking about action. I really want to thank you for taking your time and your interest. You're bringing your spirit to help us think about the issues that raised in this movie, how we manage to balance the issues between public and private use and protect this place that has been here long before us and hopefully will be here long after us. So thank you again. Many, many blessings as you move forward in your paths. Audience, let's think about this. We've heard a lot. We've watched a lot. But the point is, what can we do? As an environmentalist and human being, I sometimes feel that the tide is too strong, that the ocean is too deep, but I am a dot and I can make a difference. We have an action slide. And there are some actions that I'm not going to talk all about, but we've mentioned some of them. Using your voice, talking to your legislators, talking to individuals, connecting with nature, breathe it, listen to the rhythms of the life around you and participate in it, communicate and learn, do more research and live lightly on the earth, which is my favorite and hardest thing to do, is living lightly. So those are lots of things that we can do to follow up on the themes of this movie. Now let's turn to our audience. We have heard lots of wonderful ideas, saw lots of concepts discussed in the movie. Are there any ideas that you'd like to implement in the chat log? If there's something come to mind that you'd like to do to extend the work that you've discovered in the ground between us or in protecting our Mother Earth, you're ready to turn the tide by. What can you do? What will you do to turn the tide? Is there any action that you can or will take to help turn the tide on environmental degradation? I've got one. I'm going to take Rocky's invitation quite literally and get out in nature more. I tend to personally get out on the lake shore, which is nice, beach, 17 miles of public lands in Chicago area, but the Forest Preserve District, which is hundreds of acres and lots of bike paths. So that's going to be my weekend path, is the prairie path. That's part of that is in the Forest Preserve. Thank you so very much. Other ways. Encourage people to go outside together. Ooh, I like this one, Dr. Marinoff. Those of you at Dominican University, I think there's a forest preserve right across Thatcher Avenue from you, and the Nature Museum. So there's a lot of stuff you can do really close. Jim Babcock is going to talk to his neighbors about the value of replacing our lawns with native plants. Jim, you're going to get in trouble. We like our decorative plants, even though they don't belong here. DU Caroline, whoever that is, ride your bikes. The One Earth Film Festival has one. For a list of ideas to take action on these and other topics, crowdsourced from filmmakers, sustainability experts, and the One Earth team, sponsors, and partners, visit oneearthfilmfest.org and take action for the planet. Biking instead of using a car, take part in the shoreline cleanup. Oh gosh, I wish you hadn't mentioned that, Kristen, on the subject of taking part in the cleanup. This is Earth Week. Surprise, surprise. This is the Earth Week celebration of the One Earth Film Festival. This is only Thursday. We've still got excellent environmentally focused films Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there are going to be organized cleanups around the west side of Chicago on Saturday morning. More information available on these at oneearthfilmfest.org. In the coming days, we will send you all a copy of the slide deck and the take action slides. We certainly hope you will review those and do something to take advantage of this Earth Week. Get out there, do something to protect our mother. A couple of comments from the chat log. Encourage individuals to bring nature to their homes. The One Earth Film Festival would like for you to participate in a survey. Click the survey button on the screen to go to bit.ly and tell us how we did. And Gail has volunteered to do the shoreline cleanup, and it sure is fun. Connecting with people, connecting with nature. I can't think of anything that I would rather do, and I hope to see you all out there. Again, I guess I've got 1 minute, so I won't belabor the point, but I'd like to thank you all for your participation. Bernadette, thank you for taking time out of your busy afternoon to join us. Raquel, thank you for your work and your efforts locally to help connect people to the forest preserves. Each one of you, both at Dominican and streaming in on video, thank you for taking the past couple of hours to help build community. I think we are a force multiplier, and I enjoy having your drops along with mine. A few closing notes. To learn more about our panelists and stay in touch with their work, see the links on the closing slide. Remember to tweet, post, or share about this experience. And thanks to each one of you for participating. Blessings. Happy Earth Day. Happy Earth Week. I hope to see you in nature. See you in spirit. Be well.
Thank you.
Yeah, muchas gracias.